Good evening. This is Jim Martorano from All About Town, and today I'm with an old friend. He's not that old, but he's been a friend for a long time, and we've had him on the show a few times. And the reason for that is he's a very important person. In the town, governments change, and town supervisors change, council people change. But what stays the same what gives the town continuity is the planning department and this particular person, John Tegeder. Welcome to the show. Nice to see you, John.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for asking me again. I can't say that I'm young. I am getting into the old category, but I'm happy to be here still.
So do you remember, you started out, if you could tell us a little bit about your career, there was a guy named Magnus, right?
Yeah.
And I think he left, and you came on. And tell us a little bit about the beginnings of your career and, some of the highlights during your long tenure as Yorktown planner. By the way, the planner is so important because the planner has a vision of the town. You often hear people complaining there's not enough this or not enough that, or it's not sightly, or we'd like to see it more like Mount Kisco. Well, the planner is the person that really has the vision and the brains to set plans to make us as attractive and as efficient as possible. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey as town planner?
Sure. So I've been here since November of 1997, and I came as an architect. So that's my first calling. So I'm a licensed architect. But I came here in November 1997. I was hired by Magnus, and in a short period, Magnus left. He left in January of 1999. So I was here only really about a year, and then the responsibilities of the department kind of fell to me. I was really in the position at that time. I was assistant planner. We have another position between that and then what I am now, which is the director of planning. So I assumed the responsibility of the department and just tried to build it back and really focus on producing for the boards, the planning board and the town board, producing, all of the professional work that they need to, make the good decisions that I think that we know Yorktown has made in the past. So in terms of highlights, I really have to say that the highlight, at least in my first years, was working with some really great people, staff level and on the boards. I really have to go back and mention, the planning board at the time, which had folks like Jerry Deneen as the chairman, Judy Reardon, Bernie Grossfield, Robin Steiniger. They were on the board for many years. They had long experience. Some were on other boards. They really knew what the sort of unwritten plan was, and they really had it embedded in their mind. And I learned, I really learned from them, watching them and listening to them. So that really was the highlight, along with, yourself on the town board, folks like Linda Cooper, all looking at the issues of the town and trying to come up with well thought out solutions, which is really how I cut my teeth, I think, is really the highlight that I'd like to point out in those early years.
I'm glad you mentioned Jerry Deneen. He was a good friend. He was a brilliant man. He was actually, last time I ran, he was my treasurer, and he passed away in the middle of the campaign. He was just a great guy. He did have a vision. But tell us a little bit, a person that might be watching and saying, what does the planning department actually do? So if somebody comes in with a site plan, they want to build a Uncle Giuseppe's, another one, or something like this. What's the process like, and how does the planning department get involved?
Okay, so the planning department really is kind of, when that happens, is the first stop. We manage that process for the planning board. Planning board is the ones that make the decisions. They do the review of the project for it on its merits, and they will formulate the final approval for the project if it reaches that. What we do is we gather all the information and bring all the professional advice and facts to the planning board so that they can, continue and make, as good a decision as they're able to. An applicant will come in, we have meetings with them, we have an initial meeting, we have meetings throughout the process. Sometimes these processes can go on for, you know, a number of years, depending on the scope and the size and the complexity of the project. Complexity can mean a lot of things. It could be technical complexity. It can be political complexity. But we're here kind of being the shepherds of that process for the planning board, sometimes for the town board as well, to make sure that those things go through the process correctly, that the record that reflects the approval is sound, and that all of the technical information and technical requirements in terms of the laws are complied with for the project. That's kind of the technical aspect of it. The other sort of broad overarching thing that we do in the planning department is think about the future built environment of the town, and we have that as a care of ours. And so we get involved not only in application, but in the broader scope of planning the town, whether in front of the town board or the planning board in terms of like a comprehensive plan, of making sure that consideration for how the town will function, how it will look, whether it causes you to feel a pleasant feeling when you're using the town. That's kind of the overarching thing that we do. Comes through when we're shepherding applications. It comes through when we're doing other more broader planning efforts.
One of the things I know that you always were cognizant of is a streetscape, being able to, in your town, walk from A to B without a car. And I know you always looked for, or had a vision the plans that come in to have accessibility for walking, to make the town more citizen-friendly and, you know, without the vehicles. So every once in a while, we do reassess the overall plan of the town. When was the last, I can't remember how many years ago we had that, but that's a huge undertaking. Could you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Sure. The plan we have now is about 12 years old. It was adopted in 2010, June of 2010. However, it was written 7 years before, in 2003. It was really initially adopted, but there were some issues with it, and its real formal adoption didn't come until 2010. So from that, you can surmise that they can take quite a long time. It is a monumental effort. It is monumentally important to have a plan and to have a good plan. What we did when we wrote the plan, we hired a consultant. We hired several consultants.
I was on the town board.
You were. I think that we hired a very good consultant who managed and helped us manage some of the other sub-consultants, like historical consultants. But what we did is we went out to the public. We did surveys. We had outreach on television. We did many public hearings that were focused on certain aspects of the plan, for instance, land use, for instance, economic development, and we invited, you know, the public in. We invited stakeholders of certain neighborhoods that we knew to be very active in the community, and we held charrettes for people to get together and break out and talk about what should happen in the town. So there was a lot of public data gathering. There was a lot of, you know, technical data gathering, but there was also this public input portion of it that was lengthy, but I think that it was important and really helped to make what I consider a pretty good plan that still, I think it still stands today. There's some things now that we've gone through in the last, you know, 10 years that probably bear some revision, and it's probably ripe for some update at the very least. But I still think that many of the things in the plan are very, very good.
That was probably the last major thing I was involved in during my 20-year tenure on the town board. Do you remember the times we used to have a large room filled with different groups of people, some working on Shrub Oak, some working on Mohegan Lake, you know, and we would work on it for months and months and months. And it becomes a document that's supposed to be the planning document guiding the future of the town. Do people still refer to it? Is it still operational, or basically people, you know, for example, when Trader Joe's came in recently and there's a plan, there were Uncle Giuseppe's. Do people go back to that plan and look and see what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what are the needs based upon the plan? Because as you know, if you're living in Shrub Oak, the Shrub Oak people, they had a vision of their hamlet. Mohegan Lake had a vision of their hamlet, and we incorporated that into the plan. And do you think it's still viable? Do you think it's still, Can you tell us a little bit about what it went into, for example, the Trader Joe's application?
Yeah, sure. Trader Joe's, I'm gonna have to step back a little bit, but the Trader Joe's just came in, and it was occupying, or they actually built a building that was already approved for, as part of the larger development of Lowe's,
That's right.
which, as you recall, started out as a Costco.
That's right.
Okay, so that big box development really was already in the comprehensive plan, so it was supported by the comprehensive plan. What the comprehensive plan said for that area is that we should have a big box, a regional draw, to help any of the other developments that might happen down around the hill, which haven't happened yet, in order for them to be viable. And down on the bottom of the hill, kind of across from BJ's, where you see that open area, in the plan it says that should be more of a village-like, smaller scale development, such as, you might call them mom and pop stores or something like that. In order to have that, you also have to have some residents that live by that will use that more often. So I think the point I'm making is that the comprehensive plan is actually taking shape. It's actually represented by the Lowe's development and now Trader Joe's. And what we hope is that will continue to influence what's happening down the hill and in that corridor. Same thing for other parts of town. Some of the things in Shrub Oak that have happened are part of the comprehensive plan. Some of the things that have not happened yet are in the comprehensive plan. So, for instance, the A&P, what was the A&P shopping center? There's some treatment of that in the comprehensive plan. So every time that we get an inquiry, which we do from time to time, we absolutely refer to the comprehensive plan. We tell the potential applicant that there's a comprehensive plan. It will say some things that you have to, consider. So the answer on that is the comprehensive plan is still a viable document, still very useful, and we refer to it all the time, in particular when there are major developments that want to come in that have had some treatment in the comprehensive plan. We say, we have to pay attention to it, and to the extent that it's feasible, you have to do your development in concert with that.
Yeah, we worked very hard on that comprehensive plan, and it was difficult to do. It was controversial. Whenever you bring up these things, people didn't want to touch it for a while. It was kind of a hot potato, but we took it upon ourselves that it was a very important document. We thought it would set the vision of the town ahead for 50 years or so. One of the things that we talked about back then and continue to talk about is the possibility of having a hotel or some type of place like that in the town. And I hear that perhaps there's going to be movement on that. Could you fill us in?
Sure. Yes, the town has, and in the comprehensive plan, has thought that a hotel would be an advantageous thing to have, help a lot of the families here when they have visitors for weddings or whatever it might be. So we have tried to court hotels a number of times. There's been some properties, or there are properties near the Taconic Parkway, for instance, that seem very conducive to that type of use. Hotel chains, they know their market very, very well.
That's right.
And they don't take chances. So we haven't been successful in doing that. What's happened recently is, over the last 30 years, I think everyone will probably know when I use the term boutique hotel,
Right.
which is a small, unique type facility. It can be as small as, 8 or 10 rooms up to, 50 or 100, depending on where you are. But basically, it has a certain uniqueness, a certain charm. It has high-quality design. In other words, it's an attraction in and of itself, not just a place to stay for convenience sake when you're visiting folks, but it makes its attraction by where it is, but most importantly, what it offers in terms of the amenities. And right now, we have a applicant that is looking to pursue an 18-room boutique hotel right here in Yorktown Heights. Has a site selected and is, has been around for about a year, but has, through COVID and stuff, there's been some slow progress, but is now gearing up to move it forward, and it's going to start working its way through the various boards.
You may remember that one of my during my 2-decade tenure, one of my dreams was to build a brand-new senior center. And then we talked about a multi-generational center. And unfortunately, I was, maybe it's because of me, I was not able to get that done. I came close a couple times. Is there any movement afoot to, I mean, now that I'm a senior, I could use a center. Is there a movement afoot to make my dream come true? Or is it, you see that in the cards, or is it still a distant thought?
No, I think it's a little less distant now. The town does have discussions and some, I'm going to call them tentative agreements, and I'm not that knowledgeable in how far the town has taken it with, this particular landowner, but an agreement of sorts to build a senior center that will house not only some of the recreation offices, but have, an area for the senior clubs and things like that. So it's a possibility, more, seems to have some seriousness to it right now. Be right here in Yorktown Heights, not on the property that you recall that we were looking at that one time, but on a different property, an already developed property that will have some space for it, but, we'll see what happens. It's a strong possibility at this point.
We came very close a number of times. You may remember on the Trump place, there was a possibility of taking their model, a trailer, or turning it into some type of center. And then we had the possibility over here by the post office, remember? The guy, we were going to do a corporate, private plus government coordinated plan, but none of those things seem to work out. One of the things that you're a professional, and you have to think in your mind of the vision of the town, of both the look of the town, the aesthetic look of the town, the way it functions, and you have to somehow wade through the world of politics. Now, you've been through how many supervisors? And tell me a little bit about how difficult that can be. We'd have somebody come into office that maybe doesn't share your vision of the town. How do you coordinate that?
Well, I've been through about 7 or 8
Right.
at this point, and they're all unique, just like every human being. I have to say that it's hard to have real specific disagreements with the supervisor, because typically you're going to find most of the supervisors, and I would say all of them that I've worked for, have had the best interests of the town in mind. So, and that's what I do. And, when I'm advocating for a particular type of use on a particular piece of property, they may not see exactly what I'm saying, but certainly we're not disagreeing that, what I'm trying to do or what they're trying to do, that we're doing it from an agenda that is, nefarious in some way. So I think the supervisors and I have never really had that kind of difficult disagreements. When any supervisor that comes in, it's my job to work for them. I push their agenda forward. I may not be 100% behind it, but it's my job to push it forward as long as it's, not immoral or illegal. Right?
Let's hope.
But I have to say that it varies in terms of their vision from person to person. But again, when they get in office and they want to do the right thing for the town, usually you're going to have some compromises, but typically a good outcome.
I don't know if the audience knows this, but we're sitting in John Tegedar's office, which is located in the Al Capolini Community Center. And Al was a good friend of mine for many, many years, and passed away a few years ago, and they named the center after him. Can you tell us a little bit about, Al was involved with so many plans and so many developments. Give us a little thought about your relationship to Al, and maybe give us some type of incident or thing that happened with Al that you remember fondly.
Okay. Well, the first is, Al was really a gem. He was really a great guy. We miss him. He was involved. We saw him weekly,
Really?
in the flesh weekly.
Really?
We talked to him, several times a week, at least on the phone. So he was involved in that many things. And I think the reason was because he was so experienced at it, and not necessarily because he was a former supervisor and knew all the people, but because of how he conducted himself. And that's really the highlight that I would focus on when you talk about Al Capolini. He was such a gentleman, never had unkind words about anyone, was very honest. So that leads me to, one incident where he was representing a client, and it was a very small project, and it had to do with, moving a lot line or something of that nature. And, my reading of the zoning code had something that was somewhat contrary to what he hoped to do. And we talked about it, and we always had some laughs together. It was, humor was always part of our meetings. But he did call me a day or two later and said, I just want to let you know, Dolly, that he called people Dolly. Yeah, that I'm going to move forward, like I said, and I'm going over to wherever he was going, and basically he was telling me that he's ignoring my commentary, and I said, that's okay, Al. Have at it, and I'll see you again next week, and maybe I'll win that one. So, but I really loved him, and he's another guy that I learned a heck of a lot from.
Now, let me try to remember this. Speaking of Jerry Deneen, my memory is, it's, as I get older, it's getting worse and worse. Was there some type of singing? Were you involved in some type of a singing group with Jerry Deneen back then? I remember at a ceremony for him. Did you get up and sing?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I remember that.
Yes. Well, we had a kind of a golf group.
That's right.
Right. And this was during when he was actually sick, but we would go out and golf with him, have a really great time. And so it was several of us, and one of the folks that came out was Larry Eidelman, who was also a pretty accomplished musician, as well as he was a police officer.
Is he still alive?
Of course, yeah, he's retired up in, I think, Rhode Island. And anyway, he played the piano, and so at this ceremony, memorial ceremony for Jerry, his golf buddies, which included myself, and Larry Eidelman, who was on the piano, sang a little bit of, I think it was How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You. So.
I remember that.
Yeah, and so that's what you're referring to.
That was a beautiful ceremony. So, Abaca, I haven't been going to the meetings. I apologize. I had 20 years of meetings. So, is Abaca still alive and well? And tell us a little bit about poor Abaca, because Abaca, the idea of Abaca is they're supposed to look at a plan and see if it aesthetically fits into the townscape, so to speak. And there was a rumor once that some type of chicken place wanted to come in with a red roof, or whoever it was, and Abaca wouldn't let them come in or objected to it, and that was a cause celeb. That look at what Abaca's preventing us from businesses from coming in the town. But Abaca really does a great job for the town. Are they still alive and well? They're still active?
Yeah, they're still active, still very active. Yes, something of that nature happened. I think it actually, they were always very involved in in the color scheme, but they were also involved in signage. So
That's right.
They tried to make some of the chains desire to have their logos and so on and so forth, and all sorts of signage, very loud and brassy. They tried to tone that down quite a bit. Which, if you move through town, I think you could appreciate that that's not such a bad idea, really, on its face. But, there was, in that moment, there was kind of a movement, there was a slowdown in the economy, so there was a movement to sort of help businesses, which is a fine thing to get behind as well, but, that's where the tension was. But they still do a great job. I think they're responsible for a lot of what is attractive about Yorktown over these many years. They can, listen, this stuff is aggravating, and
Right.
it's tough, aggravating. Sometimes it's costly, often costly, but I think Yorktowners are worth it, and the town is worth those efforts. So.
Well, we're running out of time, but do you have any thoughts about what's coming next in the town? I mean, a lot of new people moving in. They're maybe not privy to the history and what we're trying to do here. How do you see the next 5 years Yorktown evolving from a planning standpoint?
Well, I think that it actually could be fairly transformative. We just had an effort recently to enact a new zoning law as an overlay district, and we have it here in Yorktown Heights, which does offer development flexibility. So you can do mixed use, in other words, apartments and some retail. The retail landscape is changing. It's changing rapidly. So that law is in place to sort of meet that. The other thing is that the real estate market is very different. Single-family homes are not really what is being funded. So what you're seeing, the funding for is for multifamily. So there's a lot of applicants out there that are responding to the market that are coming to Yorktown to try to do those types of projects.
One of the things that we were always cognizant of is that if your child gets out of college, they want to stay around Yorktown, they can't afford it, or unfortunately, people get divorced, they want to stay around, they can't afford it. So rentals has always been at a premium, but I understand there's some movement afoot on the rental availability.
Yeah, some of these projects are rental that people are thinking about doing. That's what the market is. There is a definite need for it. There's always been a need for a long time. You know, you recall all those discussions that we had. But now it's really coming to a tipping point where you know, that's the only development that's really out there. That's what the market is bearing right now. That's what the demand is. So we're trying to respond to it in appropriate places at the appropriate level of intensity, so it really doesn't overwhelm or change the character of Yorktown. We really kind of covet and protect what the character of Yorktown is, because that's why people come here, and that's what they enjoy about it. So.
Just on a personal note, I've always loved working with you. You're a brilliant man who always had the town's interest at heart. Now, you've been doing this so many years, what's John Tegedar's plan for the future? Do you have a set goal, and maybe you don't want to reveal it on the show, for retirement? And if you retire, you're going to move up north or go to Rhode Island and join our friends up there? What's your plan, personal plan?
Well, I'm going to claim probably, you know, the old adage about the shoemaker and his children and so forth. I'm a planner, so I really don't have much of a plan, unfortunately. I do it for a living, so, you know, for my own stuff, I tend to not do it too much. You know, I'm not going to work forever, of course. You know, I will retire at some point. And I'll probably stay close around. I have 2 brand new grandchildren.
Oh, congratulations.
And so we'll be around, but I hope to move around a little bit and see some things. And, you know, I probably will be looking for something to keep my time interesting. So, but
You still play golf?
I still play golf, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
I never improve these last 30 or 40 years. So.
Well, on behalf of myself and the town, I can't thank you enough for all you've done, all the hard work. People don't realize that things don't just pop up everywhere without a lot of thought and planning and work behind the scenes. And representing us, representing the people that live in Yorktown, that care about the town, is John Tegeder and staff. And we really appreciate it. You don't get enough kudos, John. You get a lot of grief from people, I'm sure, but you don't get a lot of kudos. So on behalf of the town, I want to thank you very much for all your blood, sweat, and tears for how many years now? 25 years. It sounds like you should have a little cake or something. So this is Jim Martorano from All About Town, thanking you for watching, and please join me in thanking John for his hard work. And if you're around Yorktown and you see something you like, it's probably because John had his hand in it and made sure that we got the best of every development in the town. Have a good evening, and thank you again, John, for coming on the show.
I appreciate your words, and I appreciate you having me on. I really do.
Have a good evening, and hope you tune in next week. This is Jim Martorano from All About Town saying good evening.